On August 18th, Maire Roche, author of this year's Bromantasy, will be releasing her first middle grade novel, Little Monsters, which reimagines the March sisters of Little Women fame as foster children with secret, monstrous forms. Set just outside Salem as Halloween, and apparently another mysterious monster approaches. The story blends mystery, humor, heart, and supernatural adventure, while exploring themes of self-acceptance, found family, and belonging. There's still time to pre-order from your preferred book retailers for the little monster in your own life, particularly if you want to get them the special edition with beautiful starry sprayed edges. And now, an interview with the author herself. Welcome to A Niche Retelling, the podcast where we explore all the ways old tales are made new. I am your host, Jasmine Garcia, and joining me today are...
Hi, I'm Maire Roche. I am the author of the forthcoming Little Monsters, a magical, monstrous Little Women retelling. I am a martial arts instructor, a avid baker and gardener, and I get to dream up worlds for a living now, which is fantastic. And I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Jasmine.
Oh, we're always so happy to highlight authors' new works, especially when it's in the parameter of this year podcast.
I love that you just are dedicated to retellings. That's so cool. What a fun space to be in.
Yeah, no, a dear friend of mine always likes to call it's like a love letter to the public domain and storytelling in general.
I love that. It's so fun. I know anytime the new really popular media goes into the public domain, all of my author friends and I are kind of like, ooh, what are we going to do with this? Like when Gatsby hit a few years ago, everyone was like, we're going to make it gay. So
absolutely. That's literally that's like half of what we do around here too. Literally every new year, we actually do a little segment where it's just like, okay, here's everything that's gone into the public domain this year.
Oh, that's so fun. I'm going to start listening to your recaps so that I can be like, ooh, I'm going to try this one.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to. Yeah, it's always just retelling the news, public domain day, whatever year it is.
Oh, fun. That's so cool.
Mm-hmm. And you're not even the first Little Women retelling we've talked about, actually. I guess you saw our bit on Beth is Dead?
Yeah, yes. And the author is so lovely. I love that there's been kind of just a little moment for Little Women retellings recently. Mm-hmm. There always has been. I know there's like a rom-com where Meg and Jo are like grown-ups in New York. I know there's a graphic novel where the March sisters, it's by a Black author, and the March sisters are reimagined as Black.
Yes, and like some of their,
and that one is fantastic. There is, and then Beth is Dead is great. I love that one. Mm-hmm. And I feel like everyone is really bringing something so unique to the original text, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the question must be, what are your personal connections to Little Women, and how did that help inspire you to write Little Monsters?
Yeah, so I grew up on the original, so Little Women, and I do mean because I was such a little nerd that I read the entire, like, unabridged. Like, there's lots of kid-friendly remixes, basically, that are, like, the OG source text, but condensed. And I was like, I want every drop of angst and drama. I want every bit of it. So I read the entire, like, very 3-inch thick novel that she had about them. And I loved Meg. I am an eldest daughter as well. And I loved Meg, and I felt like Jo was often unfair to her in ways that Louisa May Alcott really, like, herself was struggling with some of her own internalized misogyny. And I think that you kind of see that in the source text. And she is fantastic in so many ways because she has really overcome so many gender stereotypes and roles of her era. But I think that sometimes she does this in a little bit of a way that elevates the kind of femininity that Jo has. But sometimes a little bit is like, yeah, well, Meg is not a good woman because she's vain and she wants to look pretty and she wants pretty dresses. And I say this with so much love for Louisa May Alcott in the source text, but I wanted to take a look at that with a different lens on Meg. And like, why does Meg need to care so much about appearances? Why is Meg so driven by this? And the answer is always, of course, because Meg is in a really unfair place where she has to, in the original text, make an advantageous marriage to save her sisters from poverty, which is her only way out of the life that she has, the only way to take care of her family, which is her ultimate goal. And then in my reimagining, which is a middle grade, Meg is the eldest of 4 sisters who are all in foster care. And so Meg has to keep up appearances, has to hold her family together, has to not be too difficult, because having 4 kids in one foster home, she knows they could be split up, they could be sent to the next place. She's really insecure about that. And so she has to work so hard to keep this really fragile perception going, or she thinks she does. She has found a safer foster home than maybe she knows, but because of her experiences, she really feels like she has to hold everything together. And so when I was growing up, I remember being a little bit bothered by how Meg was portrayed, and also how fans reacted to Meg. And I loved Meg so deeply. I was like, it's not a bad thing to love pretty dresses. So I have a very monstrous Meg who loves pretty dresses. And that was really important to me. But yeah, I was raised on the source text. I had a crush on John Brooke. I had a crush on Meg too, because I was like, why not have a crush on everyone?
Yes.
And so I really wanted to kind of keep some of those elements I loved so dearly and just take a different look at them, because I have more freedoms than Louisa May Alcott did, and I have more space to explore something like that. And so it feels both like a way to challenge some of the things in the original text and also honor the person who overcame so many barriers to tell a story about women that are powerful and empowering. So, yeah.
I was thinking, you don't really see a lot of these Little Women remixes that do acknowledge Meg's point of view. And you're right, it's really not that fair. She's like, I wouldn't say she's the least popular March sister necessarily, because up until very recently, I feel like that was definitely more aimed towards Amy, and that's his own other can of worms, I feel like. But I think Florence Pugh helped a lot with that.
Yeah, and I've seen more focus on Amy in recent retellings, and I think it's fun. When I talked to my agent about the retellings, she was like, Amy's always been a personal fave for me, which I thought was funny. Like, that younger sister who's kind of just like really ferocious and sometimes a problem. Is a really interesting character. But I do think in the original, she does get a lot of like time on page, especially towards the latter half of the book.
Oh, yeah.
And Meg does as well, but it's firmly Jo's story. And so it's interesting to explore other angles there.
No, absolutely. Because Jo's obviously the most popular one, as it tends to be with the tomboys of any group of girls, I think, unfortunately. Like, well, not unfortunately, but it's kind of a bummer to everyone else.
Yeah, it's an interesting trend. I was a tomboy as a kid too, but I was a tomboy in a way that I felt like I was both high femme in my presentation, and I was going to wrestle in the mud. Like I was both. And I really wanted books that acknowledge the nuance, because sometimes I think tomboy girls get really pigeonholed into you're either one thing or the other, in a way that I think it is, not to take it back to misogyny all the time, but it's always a flavor of that, just to like, girls can only be one thing. So if you're a tomboy, you can't also like pretty dresses. Yeah. And so I think that like, yeah. And I think that pigeonholing girls like that is so silly, because girls are everything. Like, you can absolutely love your pretty femme dress and your pink bows, and you can be an adept fighter, and you can want to play in the dirt in the woods, and you can whoever you are, you can be all of those things. And I think that giving girls space by giving nuance and giving depth to characters in a new way can be really helpful for that.
No, absolutely. And again, like you said, she is a very monstrous girl with like claws and sharp teeth, but she also does want to wear a pretty fairy dress for Halloween, and that's beautiful. That's kind of my vibe there. That's very much my vibe there.
I love that so much. And I dedicated the book to all the girls with claws, because a lot of us have them and a lot of us need them, and we can still present and express however we want. And I like, personally, as a human, I like to express really feminine or more masculine depending on the day. I feel like it's also fluid, and I want children to be able to experience that and be like, oh, I don't have to be just one thing or just the other. So
you can explore, and you'd never have to stop exploring that. And
you never should stop exploring that.
Yeah. And especially now, kids absolutely need that. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. And let's see. What were some other points of inspiration for Little Monsters beyond all we've talked about so far?
Yeah, so I wanted to write a spooky story. It was autumn. I wanted to write something that felt like cozy autumn vibes. I had just visited Salem, and I love Salem. I visited many times. I had family who lived in close by for a while, and so and some friends who live in Salem still. And so I have some close connections there. And I was like, I want to write a book set in this place. And I was kind of wrestling with where I wanted to start. There's so much to Salem. There's so much of Salem's original myths, and also some really horrific things that happened in Salem's history, of course. And So I was inspired by the city itself. I was inspired by the cozy autumn vibes that I was experiencing at the time. And then I also really wanted to write a book about anxiety and how that manifests and how it feels. And so it's a very pointed metaphor in Little Monsters when Meg has so all of the sisters have their own monstrous different ability. But Meg's is that when she has the ability for her teeth to turn into very sharp, pointy fangs and her fingernails to turn into claws. And she doesn't see it as an ability. It only happens to her when she has this huge rush of emotion. And so when she gets angry, when she gets scared, when she gets upset or embarrassed, her teeth go really pointy and all of a sudden her nails turn into claws. And it's a overwhelming and scary experience, but it really is how it feels to be 13 and a girl and be like, oh my God, it feels like it is unbearable to be in my body. Like that kind of big physical, visceral feeling of being a preteen or a young teen and a girl is really, and I'm sure other genders experience this too, but my experience was being raised as a 13-year-old girl. And so I remember the body horror well. And I felt like that translated so well to this monstrous feeling, because sometimes those feelings that feel so big really do make us feel like we're monstrous in some way. And I think that metaphor for Meg is she's like, yes, I'm such a bad person for both having these feelings and this monstrous ability. And she has to go on this journey of realizing that we all have big feelings and we all just have to decide how we deal with them, and we all need support with them. And so I was really drawn toward the monstrous part of it by wanting to explore anxiety and wanting to explore anxiety in a way that felt accessible to children who don't have that language yet. I love books where anxiety rep is the goal, where they talk in depth and they use the language and they give kids those words. Those are fantastic. Those are so important. So when I say this, I don't say that to downplay that. I think there's space in this genre for many of us to do anxiety rep, and I hope we all do it differently so that children can be reached. But for me, it was actually really important to write a character who didn't have that language at all. Meg doesn't. Meg has not had the social emotional learning that she really needs at this age because she was raised in foster care. And sometimes foster parents are wonderful. But some children who have this core trauma and attachment trauma of being moved from home to home are going to have trauma and are going to have more limited vocabulary sometimes for what they've experienced. And they're going to be the children who need and deserve that most. And so it was really important to me to tell a story about a child who does not have that language yet and does not have the words for what she's experiencing. And so Meg does not have the label of, she doesn't have an anxiety diagnosis and she doesn't know what that is really, but she's experiencing it and it's connected to her monstrous nature. And so I loved having the chance to explore all of that. And I think that was a really core inspiration for me, was just this. I was a teacher prior to this, and I was a teenage girl. And so I think all of those also informed where I went with this story. It was a really fun one to tell.
I could very much tell. And there's all genders absolutely experience anxiety, but I do feel like, especially for girls and, those who are assigned female at birth, there's more of a pressure to be pleasant, to not let those big, angry or sad or just difficult feelings show. So, and then you top off the foster care angle is just like, I have to be on my best behavior. And you top it off with being the eldest daughter, trying to keep all of her sisters together. It is a high level
performance. Yeah,
yes.
It is a high level performance to sustain. And it is for anyone, but especially someone who is still a kid with a developing brain. That is so much incredible pressure. She needs to be scooped up and given a spa day and a break. But
yes.
Yeah, she does. I want that for all of our teenage girls with the weight of the world on their shoulders,
Absolutely. And, it's funny how you were talking about how, girls are not really given the space to unleash their inner monster. I did just reread The Lady from the Black Lagoon. I don't know if you're familiar.
Oh, I'm not.
So it's actually kind of a biography of the only woman to ever design one of the universal monsters, Millicent Patrick. She designed the creature from the Black Lagoon. And, she was like this very glamorous, high femme presenting woman, but she was able to create such an iconic monster. But her legacy was kind of buried by this jealous man baby in the makeup department, basically. So for decades, there were people who would deny that she had ever done it. But fortunately, the author Mallory O'Meara really did some deep dive research to kind of bring her story out into the world. So it kind of ties into that. It's just like, no, of course, someone that gorgeous could never have designed something that scary.
Oh, I feel like it's so silly because you know who invented horror as a genre?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, Mary.
and also, I did a deep dive into this recently because the first novel ever written was written by a woman.
Yeah.
In the world, first novel ever written, and in a time when women were not allowed to learn to read or write, and still managed to invent the novel. So it truly it's phenomenal when women's contributions are erased all the time, and of course when you add other lenses like contributions and accomplishments by queer women, by Black women, by disabled women, even more so. But women overall have their accomplishments just erased often. And a lot of people have high discomfort with someone both being monstrous and feminine. And I think that being able to blend those two is phenomenal. This is so different than the tone of my book, but Tradwife by Saratoga Schaefer is monstrous tradwife book about this very high femme, thin white girl doing tradwife aesthetic on Instagram who slowly transforms into a man-eating monster. And the kind of juxtaposition of those two things was fascinating, and I want to see more of that. I think there's a lot of pressure of like, well, if you like those like pretty dresses, high femme aesthetic, then you can't also have big emotions and have big reactions. You have to be one or the other. But I wanted to write a crash out, so Meg is a crash out a little bit.
It's a really good crash out too, and like I've definitely had moments where I felt like that as a teenager. Still kind of do now.
It's cathartic for kids and grown-ups, I think, to be like, oh my God, I do just want to slam into this kid on my way out of the classroom or just like have a meltdown in the forest and scream and howl at the moon. Who hasn't?
Don't you ever get tired of being nice?
Yes. Don't you ever get tired of being nice? Exactly. Less nice girls, more girls with claws.
We need it, unfortunately. I do actually want to ask, so obviously we talked a lot about Meg's monster form. Can we talk a little bit about the other sisters' monster forms and what gave you the idea for each of them?
Yeah, so each of the girls has a monstrous form that reflects some element of the source text. In some way, whether it's really subtle or not. And so Meg's is the teeth and the nails, and that comes directly from Meg's need for a beautiful public perception of people seeing her as this like elegant and dainty little lady. And she doesn't have exactly that same desire in the Little Monsters version, but she does have a desire to keep up a public perception. Jo transforms into something that's very wolfy. We don't get to know too much about it in this book. Hopefully in future books we get to focus a little bit on each sister, but I can't promise anything. We'll see. Jo sprouts bushy fur all over her body, and that comes a little bit from Jo's in the source text just being kind of like, I don't care how I look and you can't make me care about that, which is phenomenal. Love that for Jo. And also Jo's hair is a major plot point at some point in Little Women. So I do have Jo just sort of sprouting hair at all points in this book, and also being unbothered by it in a way that really horrifies Meg, because that was also a little bit from the source text, because she's like, Jo, please care. And Jo's like, I don't. And then Beth, who desperately wants to avoid being seen, in both of these, both in the original and in Little Monsters, sprouts wings and flies away. And she is very much written as a mostly more nonverbal than not child. And she is very like, I would say selective mutism is probably the best way to describe her experience of the world. She's also written as autistic. And
I clocked that. I knew it.
Yes. So she's got some really strong sensory preferences. She's got some really strong preferences about her clothes, which are really hard because her bat wings keep breaking through them. And what is more noticeable than a child literally flying away with their wings? Like she has to figure out how to reckon with being seen and perceived, and with the big sensory overstimulation that it brings her. So that is sort
Scary
of
type of eloping right there.
Yes, really. Eloping on 100.
Yep. Every special education teacher's worst nightmare, I think.
Yes, yeah, and I hope that I get to explore that in the Beth book at some point, because she's a really fun, fingers crossed. And then Amy,
I would love that.
So Amy loves the limelight. Amy loves to be the center, and so this is where her power in her magical ability in the Little Monsters comes from. She transforms into a mermaid, but not the sexy kind of mermaid, the like really horrifically fishy, gigantic, bigger than a school bus, smells like death kind of mermaid if she touches salt water. So she's very averse to going to the beach, but she really wants to be an influencer. That's her ultimate goal in life. Because I felt like Amy March would want to be an influencer. I was thinking about the scene with the limes, and I was like, you had to have more limes than everybody else in your class, and I do feel a little bit like you would want to have like a haul on TikTok, you know, like that would be where she would be in the modern day. So poor Amy, though, cannot go to the beach with her fun new swimsuit because she will turn into a monster, which is also something that I'm hoping I get the chance to play with, because I feel like Amy has to kind of reckon both with this desire for attention and also you can't control public perception of you. So if you want to be in the limelight, public perception is people are going to see you how they see you. And coming to accept that, I think, is a really powerful thing for any of us to experience, but certainly for a young tween girl. So I do hope that I can look at all of them more closely, but those are the overall gist of the powers.
Yeah, because I was thinking as I was reading, it's like, oh, I kind of do wish I could see a little bit more of all the sisters. So it's nice to know that it is a plan. I hope it happens for you. And yeah, especially now when apparently most kids, when they ask what they want to be, when they're asked what they want to be when they grow up, are saying like influencer of some kind. Yeah, I feel like we're going to need Amy's story here.
I feel like it could be really useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that we need to explore that one a little bit with kids.
Yeah. And so you also released Bromantasy this year, which I did also read. Yes. Very different. Of course. Two very different books, but they do both include queer leads because Meg is explicitly bisexual in this because she's said to have had a crush on one of her friends. So love that. Mm-hmm. And also, more importantly, lovable, misunderstood monster girls. Were these similarities intentional? And can you talk a bit about how your process in writing both differed or perhaps coincided?
Yeah, so I wrote Little Monsters long before I wrote Bromantasy, actually. So even though they're published very close together, like 3 months apart, Little Monsters had a long lead time. My publisher picked that one up and wanted a long time to break out in middle grade because that takes a while. So I have actually worked with my fantastic publicist for over a year prior to publication, which is pretty rare, at least in my experience. It's usually the last 6 months towards pub that you start doing a lot of publicity. And so they have worked really hard on Little Monsters. So they're very different in era to me in when I wrote them. They're almost about a year apart when I was drafting, if not more than that. But I do have a soft spot for monstrous little people. And part of that comes from, I was a teacher, but I was also a really difficult kid. And I think that there are not many teachers who were the difficult kids. I knew a lot of teachers who were a pleasure to have in class. And I knew a lot of teachers who were really just and this is not a diss to any of them, that they all loved school so much and it was easy and it was fun. And that made it easy to decide to go and be a teacher. And I was not that child. And so when I taught pre-K and kindergarten, and I usually ended up they called it the behavior classroom, but that's a kind of a bad word for it. And I was teaching children who had been kicked out of so many other programs, they didn't have anywhere else to go. And I did not find them difficult because I was like, no, I actually just understand you. And I understand why school is not set up for you to succeed. And I also, a lot of those children are referred to as monsters from a very young age. And a lot of them face really, really uphill stereotypes. And so part of why I explore children who seem difficult in fiction is because all children are all of our children. That's a James Baldwin quote that I've probably butchered, but he talks about how all of the children are all of our children everywhere in the world. And that really had guided me as a teacher, guides me as a human, and it guides me as I write fiction because all of the children are all of our children. And anything that opposes that is just not a morality I can get behind. And so writing about monstrous children and monstrous little girls, especially, and girls who exist in the margins is something I am really deeply passionate about. It's something I will always do to some extent, no matter what genre I'm toying with, what genre I'm playing in. But it was fun to be able to do Little Monsters and Bromantasy sort of back to back in this way, because Bromantasy is mostly silly, upbeat, kind of tongue-in-cheek romp. And then they have the more serious moments are grounded by meeting a little girl who's not accepted by the world and who is a little bit monstrous. Very sharp teeth. We love this for Bear. And then Little Monsters has a little bit more of a serious tone, but cozy in the same sense, I think. Both of these you can curl up in your blanket on a cozy autumn day and with a good drink and some cheese and read them. But Little Monsters does tackle more real world things, I think. But process-wise, I feel like most books are different. Every book is different that I've ever written process-wise. So, but thematically, I feel like drawn together by this. I have this deep love of children at the margins. So.
No, that's beautiful. We really do need more educators like that, because I was actually in teaching for a while, and well, yes, I had my difficult phase. I was mostly a really good student and the pleasure of having class kind of kid. So actually, I think that actually is part of why I did not really succeed as a teacher, because it was harder for me to understand the kids who were struggling. So honestly, good for you for having an easier time there.
I loved them. If they would tell me there was a kid who had like, I got a child one time who had like chipped his teacher's tooth by headbutting her so hard. And he was like 4. And I was like, and they told me, listen, this is, you know how teaching works. So, you know, like it was 9 p.m. on a Sunday night and they were like, this kid is starting in your class tomorrow. And you're like, okay, you got to be ready. And so I just restructured our week because he was going to throw chairs for the first week as he figured out where the limits were. And then he did that. And I had this fantastic moment with him where he picked up a chair, threw it at me, and I caught it and I set it down. He was like, oh, you're a very good chair catcher, teacher. And I was like, I am indeed. And then I was just like really calm. I was not fazed by it. And I think that really helped this child just re-regulate. And he was like, oh, well, you're not scared of me. Because I think at some point, children even really small like that are like, everyone is scared of me and nobody knows what to do with me, which is terrifying when you're 4 apples tall, you know? So I think that I was like, no. Both, I'm bigger than you and this is safe and you're okay. And also like, I have done much, much more disruptive, chaotic things than you can even dream of, my love. And you can't overwhelm me. And I'm not teaching anymore. It was just too hard on my body, but it was as it is for most teachers. But I love that I can stay. Yeah. I love that I can stay close with writing books for kids. That is really special.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think if I was doing it now, I would probably have an easier time, but I think I just started too young, honestly.
And that's fair.
And it's hard out there right now as for teachers, like not just for the kids, for the teachers too. Like nobody's getting the support they need, I don't think.
No, the post-COVID teaching landscape is terrible.
No, it is a shame, but yeah, so good on you for still finding a way to kind of reach kids, and that's beautiful. Let's see. Can we talk a little bit about how you decided to adapt Meg and John Brooks's relationship, actually? Especially now with the lens that you did have crushes on both of them as a child. That's adorable.
I was like, which one do I like best? And I was I was like one of my first moments of just sheer gay panic. I was like, well, I like that Brooks is like strong. John Brooke is strong and silent and steady. And I like that Meg is so pretty. And I was just like, women, because, you know, that's really the overarching experience there. But I loved John Brooke. I loved that he was so perfect for Meg, because Meg thinks she knows what she wants. And then she meets this person who is like steady and has her back. And he kind of lets her step outside of this role of having to be this person who cares for her family. And he gives her a new space to exist where she can just be more wholly herself. And so I wanted to translate that to a teenage boy who lives next door. And so, in Little Monsters, he goes by Brooks. And he's such a cool kid. He wears his little gold chain that Meg is really like all heart aflutter about. He notices her, and most people don't notice Meg. Most people see what Meg can do for them, which is an eldest daughter experience, if you've ever heard one. They see how Meg is competent, they see what Meg can do, or they see when Meg fails. Those are the times when Meg feels seen. But this boy looks at her and sees her immediately. And so I felt like the core of John Brooke and Meg's original love story is that he can really see her and see past the eldest daughter aspect of her to who she really is. And so I translated that to a very teenage form of like this first friend who's ever really looked at you and seen you. And he has more shared experiences with her too. So Meg has a really good friend who is a good friend in the original book as well, Sally. And they are great friends, but Sally has a good life and has a good mom and has had a really easy time of it and a really normal childhood, which is what we want for all kids. But there's an aspect of that makes her unable to understand what Meg has gone through. And Meg also doesn't have the skills to translate that or explain it, because who would at 14? And so, but Brooks does. Brooks has a more similar life to Meg. And so when he sees her really fully. And she's like, oh, this is both really nice and also makes me scared, which, you know, that's how crushes work. So it was really fun to be able to adapt that. I felt like I was really careful and intentional with how I adapted the friendship and love dynamics, and it was fun to crack that one. Brooks was a favorite of mine.
It's really the inherent romanticism of shared trauma.
Yeah, the trauma bond, but also the how romantic it is for someone to like see you and want to make sure that you're fed, because he's kind of like, well, have you had breakfast? And she's like, huh? What? Who notices that? And he's like, me. What do you mean? We're supposed to notice that if we care about each other. And she's kind of like, what? Like just absolutely flabbergasted, but in a good way. And he's a simp for Meg as well. So it's wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. It's adorable, honestly. It's very, very cute. And we don't see Laurie a lot in this one, but he's a bit of a chaos gremlin in there, which I guess kind of makes sense because a modern Jo March would also be a chaos gremlin. So of course they're best friends.
Oh, I loved writing Laurie. I have more to tell with Jo and Laurie. So there's a lot of hints of what both of them are actually going through. And Meg is a little bit oblivious because Meg has so much going on. But I think a very clever reader is going to see that there's a lot going on there with Jo and Laurie, and that Laurie has more to him than meets the eye. But I loved writing a very ADHD rep for Laurie. Yes. He's very much like, he's got some strong sensory preferences, but it also, I got to really write the difference between a kid with ADHD who's mostly had their needs met, which is what Laurie's experience of the world has been, versus Beth, who mostly hasn't. And they kind of are interesting contrasts, even though it's neither of their stories, so they don't get a ton of page time, but it was kind of a depth to it that I really wanted to have for them, is like, here is what the world is like for Beth because she's had these barriers, and Laurie has barriers too, and he certainly has like ways his grandpa doesn't understand him, which is classic in both versions. But he does have a little bit of a better time. But I loved how chaotic he was. He's a chaotic little guy.
Little baby conspiracy theorist, except in the fun way, not in the scary fascist way, thankfully.
Yes, in the fun way for sure. He's like, aliens for sure are real and might kidnap me at any moment kind of conspiracy theory.
Yeah, bring that back, please.
Yeah, that was a much nicer version of conspiracy theories.
Absolutely. Is there anything else about the book you would like to discuss?
No, I think that I really hope that kids find and connect with it. It is such a special book to me. It is, if you like high stakes stories that also have a lot of heart, I hope that Little Monsters is a fit for you. These girls were really fun to reimagine in the modern world. And I think that if you loved Little Women, or if you've never read it, there is something in this book for you. So yeah,
absolutely. And speaking of, why do you think Little Women endures?
That's such a great question. I feel like there's some just universal themes of girlhood and some archetypes that Louisa May Alcott really unlocks that have stood the test of time, and some of the sister dynamics and some of the ways that they both love each other and resent each other and are annoyed by each other and are devoted to each other and want to have some space from each other and can't imagine life without each other, that are so universal to a sister experience of absolutely out of your mind because you're too close in proximity with this person who you would die for. Like it's all of those things. So I think the sisterhood dynamic of it, and I think that the kind of reach that she had in her lifetime with girls who maybe didn't have other opportunities to read representation of girlhood like that, I think also has helped it stand the test of time, because there is a lot of very feminist, womanist themes in that story that are, I think, that last, and that we can have to work with and challenge in a modern setting. You know, we can both love for what she did for her time and also look at places where we would challenge that in today's world. And so I think that both exist, and there's a lot of complexity to the text that allows us to play there, which is cool.
No, absolutely. And it's probably no coincidence that we're only a few years out from the 2019 Little Women adaptation, that we are getting so many more from that, which is nice. You know, brought it back into the zeitgeist a bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts, or shall we close this out?
I don't, but thank you so much for having me. This was delightful. And thank you for letting me ramble about education at length. That was an unexpected treat.
No, absolutely. Very happy to. We like talking about like the varying social structures that impact storytelling around here. That's like, like we literally have we have our own little Cards Against Humanity deck, and one of them is the real world bums us out. Because we are unfortunately very conscientious of the way the real world bums us out and connects to things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge part of it.
Yes. So thank you. But yes, thank you for coming on with us. And as a queer reader with a big little queer found family amongst this podcast, thank you for writing this queer norm middle grade novel as well. I caught those casual mentions of non-binary kids. Awesome.
Oh, it was fun. I wanted to do something subtle enough to not get banned in today's day and age, and also to have some really clear and accurate rep. It is really important, especially now. People will not look at this and think it's a queer book, but queer readers who are otherwise barred from picking up books because of many horrific reasons will be able to still see themselves in these pages.
Yep, I little Jazz could have used something like this, so thank you for that.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you for saying that.
Of course. And so yes, where can people get this book? Where and when can people get this book actually?
Yes. It's out August 18th. You can pre-order signed copies from Wild Rumpus Bookstore in Minneapolis. And I will have a launch event with Juliana Brandt on Saturday, August 22nd, which is 2 weeks from today.
Ooh,
so
exciting.
If you want signed copies, but otherwise they're available anywhere books are sold. So if you get them from Barnes & Noble or your local indie, if you can order from an indie bookstore, but they are anywhere. There's an audiobook version, an ebook, and obviously the beautiful, gorgeous purple sprayed edges hardcover.
Yep. They were kind enough to send me a copy of that sprayed edges hardcover. I'm very grateful and very excited to see what people think of it.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think that is a good way to wrap up. And you can find me at Faye Riviera on all the socials, as well as this podcast at nicheretellingpodcast.tumblr.com. And if you have room in your wallets, please consider donating to our Patreon, our Ko-Fi, or the support the show link below. Through that, you can get bonus content, you can receive episodes early, and you can even join our IER book club, which I plan on revitalizing for the summer. But of course, times is hard. Not everyone can afford that. So please consider spreading the word about us by giving us a rating on the podcatcher of your choice, leaving a comment. And additionally, you get to hear your name in the credits of every episode, such as Juan Garcia, Connor Duffy, and Kyle Calgren. Thank you all so much for taking the time to support this show financially, or just spreading the word to those who might be interested. All this is vital to helping us reach the next chapter of our story. And speaking of the next chapter of our story...